Does your kiddo struggle to read? We're going to talk about some strategies to help your child overcome some of these difficulties they're having, because it's really hard to get your child to love and enjoy reading when they're encountering so many different obstacles. Before we get into that, it's really important to understand that there are different ways to teach reading. And the reason this is important is because if your child doesn't have some of these foundations, some of these obstacles they face are going to continue. So I just want to give you a background on the different methods of teaching so that you can see all that is out there, because it could be that your school or you have tried these different ways or whatever. I just want you to know what is there so that you have more knowledge. It's always nice to have more knowledge. So a lot of these that I looked up, I knew a lot of these, but I went ahead and I looked up on AI so that I could give you a concise definition, and then I added a lot of my own thoughts. We're going to start with a phonics-based approach. Phonics instruction is based on teaching children the relationship between letters and their corresponding sounds, which is called phonemes. It emphasizes letter-sound associations, decoding skills, and word recognition through systematic instruction of phonics rules. This method helps students learn to sound out words, recognize patterns, and improve reading accuracy. This is the method that I feel students need a foundation in to truly be successful readers. Whole language approach. The whole language approach emphasizes that the overall meaning of text, context, clues, and language experiences teach reading. It involves immersing children in authentic literature, encouraging reading for meaning, and developing comprehension skills through exposure to a wide range of text. Whole language instruction focuses on the holistic view of reading as a natural process and values language-rich environments. Okay, so we're going to pause right there for a second. So whole language, the whole problem to me in whole language is it talks about, like, even in the definition, it says immersing children in authentic literature. So you're immersing them in that. So it's almost like if we just dunk them in it, they're going to learn how to read. Developing comprehension skills through exposure to a wide range of texts. Focusing on a holistic view of reading. I'm not understanding, and I've been through this whole process as a teacher. I didn't understand how this actually helped children understand how to get from A to D and hit B and C to learn how to read. So this is why, me personally, I had trouble in this. Now, in the mid to late 90s, and I was a teacher at this time, we had what was called the reading wars, and it became a prominent debate in educational institutions. So people were torn between, and people, when I say people, I'm talking about superintendents, teachers, classroom teachers, special ed teachers, all across the gamut. Very few parents in the 90s were really getting involved in this minor like focused of an educate. They just wanted their kids to learn how to read. They didn't really get involved at this level, but people who are educating the children really were. So people were really torn between a phonics-based or a whole language approach. So up rose from the ashes a balanced literacy approach. The balanced literacy approach combines elements of both phonics instruction and whole language principles. It integrates explicit phonics instruction with authentic reading experiences, vocabulary development, comprehension strategies, and opportunities for writing. Balanced literacy aims to provide a comprehensive approach to reading instruction that addresses various aspects of literacy development. And out of the wars supposedly came the voice of reason. And according to me, where we went was with the hybrid option and took what was good and worked from both of these and combine the two. That was what I thought when I read all of this happened. However, I've recently listened to an amazingly fascinating podcast about reading and how it affects children, and that will be linked in the notes. And it indicates that the balanced literacy that approach was actually not so balanced after all. It actually leaned very heavily towards whole language, but it was kind of like a give me, so that people who were arguing against whole language would feel like they were being heard. Okay, now we have sight words method. The sight words method involves teaching students to recognize common high-frequency words by sight rather than decoding them phonetically. This method focuses on memorizing and quickly identifying frequently used words which can enhance reading fluency and comprehension, especially for irregularly spelled words. I have not been in the school in many, many years. However, when both my boys were in kindergarten, this was the approach to teaching reading in the very beginning. The boys were given, I think they were called SAM books. The books had 2 or 3 letter words in it, and there was a lion and a mouse, I think. And the boys had to bring home a book, and it was just a tiny little paper stapled together, right? Every single night. This was their homework, and they got a new book every day, and they had to read it to me. And eventually they learned these words that were used over and over and over and over again. It could be argued that this used some whole language techniques as well, because each of the pages came with illustrations that represented what the text was saying. So children could guess based on contextual clues. Interactive read aloud. Interactive read-alouds involve teachers or caregivers reading aloud to children while engaging them in discussions, asking questions, and making connections to the text. This approach promotes active listening, comprehension, vocabulary development, and critical thinking skills by providing a rich literary experience. This, by far, is the most engaging way to encourage children to like to read. I would incorporate this one, the read aloud approach, into any method you use to teach or encourage your child to read. That's the best one. Phonemic awareness. I have no idea if I pronounced that correctly. Training. Phonemic awareness training focuses on developing children's ability to hear, identify, and manipulate individual sounds, the phonemes we talked about in the phonetic approach in spoken language. This pre-reading skill helps children understand the building blocks and words and enhances their phonics and decoding abilities. This is phonics without writing it down. I think this is hugely helpful, and I would also incorporate this one. There are many verbal games that can be played with it, and we just talked about last week playing games and learning with games. And that way a child can make this fun. Phonics skills necessary for long-term reading success, regardless of which of those ways you choose, or if you choose combination, and I totally recommend a combination of those. Regardless of which way you choose, excuse me, I truly believe that for your child to be successful with long-term reading and reading the more difficult texts and the nonfiction texts like science or social studies, which we're going to talk about in about 2 or 3 weeks, they need to have these skills. 1, an early reader needs to be able to identify letters and the sounds they make. This fundamental skill involves recognizing individual letters of the alphabet and understanding the corresponding sounds they represent. It is crucial for early literacy development as it forms the basis for reading and for writing. Proficiency in letter identification provides the foundation for decoding words and comprehending written language. You can use various activities such as letter recognition games, flashcards, and interactive exercises to help your child master this skill. 2, a child needs to know what sounds letters make when they are put together in different combinations. Building upon letter sound recognition, this skill focuses on understanding how letters combine to form different sounds and words. It encompasses phonics, which involves associating specific sounds with individuals or groups of letters, phonemes. By learning these letter combinations and their corresponding sounds, phonics, children can effectively decode and pronounce words they encounter while reading. Activities like phonics games, word blending exercises, and phonemic awareness tasks assist children in mastering these skills. 3, finally, your child must be able to decode text in order to be able to read effectively. If they're trying to read and they don't know that in a 4-letter word, if there's an E at the end and there's a vowel in the second spot and the third spot is a consonant, that means that the second vowel is long and the E is silent. So instead of saying havey, it's have. That's just an automatic skill that they would learn, and that decoding skill. So that would cause incredible frustration. But just by knowing that skill, they can pronounce have, cave. There's so many, right? Bade. There's just a million of those kind of 4-letter words. And all of them your child can pronounce, even if they don't even know what they mean, because it follows that rule. Decoding refers to the ability to translate written words into spoken language by applying knowledge of letter-sound relationships. Effective decoding skills enable children to read fluently and comprehend written text. By breaking down words into phonemes and blending these sounds together, readers can accurately pronounce unfamiliar words and understand the meaning of the text. Strategies like chunking words, using context clues, and practicing reading aloud help children enhance their decoding abilities and become proficient readers. I have a super duper tip for you. I can see your child now as you sit down to do phonics. It is usually not an exciting or hands-on activity. You can make learning these skills much more exciting and subliminally teach all 3 phonics skills by using an audiobook. You need to get an audiobook that is at or slightly above your child's reading level. You also need to get one that your child is interested in. If your child isn't interested in it, none of this will work. Go to your library. They're free, and your librarian has a wealth of knowledge to help you. Then you also have to check out the actual book, with the pages. So you have it on audio and you have it on book. While your child listens to the book, have them follow along in written text. This way, they can see it at the same time as they hear it. This is so critical. This covers all 3 of those skills. Reading aloud to your child is one of the best activities you can do to not only encourage reluctant readers, but to also bolster a child's literacy development. According to research, reading aloud improves a child's phonological awareness, broadens their vocabulary, and helps with complex syntax structures. If I were to advise only one place to start, regardless of what your child struggles with in reading, I would say start with a routine of reading aloud. A quick rundown on engagement in reading. There are many ways to help your child become more comfortable with reading. I actually cover these at length in 8 ways to help your child fall in love with reading. Briefly, here are 4. Read with your child. Turn read aloud time into read together time. Once your child is capable of reading, alternate with your child reading the text. You read one paragraph, page, or chapter, they read the next. Choice. Whether your child is reading with you or to themselves, allow them to choose a book that interests them. Currently, you are going for the win of having your child wanting to read and reading well. This is not the time to choose the genre and growth in their reading experiences. And create a comfortable reading environment. Children love forts. Create a special place, a type of fort that is comfortable and free from distractions, that is specifically designed for reading. Give your child a way to keep track of their reading progress. A book tracker is almost like a reward system. Your child can see all that they have accomplished, and that just feels really, really good. It shows the books that they have read, the author, the date it was completed, and it can even have a star ranking system, so your child can be the critic. And what child does not love to share their opinion? Pre-reading activities. I love Shakespeare. Admittedly, these plays can be difficult to understand. Reading them can be even more challenging. When you introduce a book to your child who struggles with reading, imagine an adult sitting down to a Shakespearean play. The language is kind of familiar. However, the order of the words is sometimes difficult to follow, and some of the actual words are not ones they are familiar with. It is so difficult to actually read the work that understanding it and getting the humor behind the story is beyond their ability of just reading the actual sentences. It is the same for your child who struggles with reading. It's that adult reading Shakespeare. How can you make this easier? Learn the characters in advance. Look at the cover of the book and talk about who is on the cover. What is the title and what might it mean? Are there any characters present, like in the title or in the cover? Why are those characters present? Leaf through the pages and find any characters that appear. Learn their names based on the images. Can your child see if there are any relationships between the characters? Can they guess what any of the problems may be? Now that your child has some clues to what the story may be about, they will be less frustrated with reading because they will not lose the story as they decode the sounds. Graphic organizer. Reading is very linear. There's a very set way we read. You cannot do it in a different way. You have to go left to right, and you have to do it on one line. What if your child sees the world as peoples and ideas relate to each other? What if your child sees circles and not lines? There are several graphic organizers that you can use that may help your child see the story. A Venn diagram is a classic one, but there are so many. If you want to look at several different kinds, go to Canva. I know, I refer to Canva all the time, but it is a fabulous resource for moms. There you can type in graphic organizers, and you will pull up several. Vocabulary. Look through the book before you give the book to your child. Find words that you feel are going to for sure stump your kiddo. Go over those words before you ever sit down to read. You can try them in conversation, and then you can show them what they look like in written form. A story hunt. I often recommend using these as rewards after reading a book. I know that if I had promised my boys a story hunt after each book they read, I would have had a full-time job just creating these, as the boys would have read even more than my older one did. I had a reluctant reader for my younger one, but he would not have been reluctant if I'd promised these. A story hunt, in a nutshell, is a scavenger hunt that is all about a book. You can use it, however, with your child who is struggling with reading to introduce the book. It would be used the same way you use the graphic organizer or learning characters in advance. Your child would simply be finding objects, and this is for your hands-on kiddo. This is such a fabulous thing. So they'd be finding objects related to the book and learning about the story and go from clue to clue. With the right strategies, struggling readers can unlock the joy of reading. Keep in mind that every child learns at their own pace, and with your support, you can make all the difference in fostering a love of reading that will last a lifetime. The kids' movie quote, "If you stop to think about it, you'll have to admit that all the stories in the world consist essentially of 26 letters. The letters are always the same, only the arrangement varies. From letters, words are formed. From words, sentences. From sentences, chapters. And from chapters, stories. The never-ending story." If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode. And for that, I want to send you a huge thank you. Please leave me a comment or review and share with other moms you know. Get in touch in the comments or on Kara's social media networks. See you next week.